Hello, welcome to Church Searcher. Today we're in the beautiful village of Arncliffe in the Yorkshire Dales, and the place name Arncliffe translates in Saxon as Eagle Cliff, and you can still see the cliffs all the way around the village here. Now the village was used for filming the original series of the long-running British soap opera Emmerdale Farm, and the pub here, the Falcon, was the original Woolpack Inn. More recently, the village has been used for filming All Creatures Great and Small, being used for everything from Darrowby Show to the location of the bus stop where James often picks up his parents when visiting from Glasgow. However, it's the church, St Oswald's, that was used as one of the locations for James and Helen's wedding that we're going to be looking at. So come with me now as we explore St Oswald's Church, its connections to James Herriot, All Creatures Great and Small, the Battle of Flodden, and the famous Victorian novel, The Waterbabies. I'll see you after the map. So just before the wedding service begins, Tristan and Seigfried both pull up here outside the church in their cars. Tristan is running around searching for the missing ring. Seigfried is juggling with an unruly dog. But if you just look to the side of where Tristan parks his car, you'll see an unusual feature hidden away amongst the grass. It's the village stocks. In 1530 there was the Statute of Labourers, which meant every village had to have a set of stocks. This was finally repealed in 1863, but you often find them near churches, and here you can see the seat is positioned so that you're facing the church. You'd have your legs in the holes. That's pretty uncomfortable. Maybe it's meant for side by side, so you could have a friend by you here. But you're essentially in a position facing the church, asking for forgiveness, back to the road, people passing by, passing comment probably. Quite a prominent position, quite uncomfortable. Ooh. So Tristan and Seigfried run into the churchyard of St Oswald's here, still looking for the ring, and rather than running through into the front of the church, they actually go around the back, around the side of the tower here. So the tower is from a church which dates back to the 1500s. It's the only part of that church which survives, and that actually replaced an earlier church from the 12th century, which itself replaced a Saxon church that was on this site. The rest of the church has been added on to later, but if we go inside, we'll see an amazing connection between the church here and the Battle of Flodden, which was fought about 160 miles north of here on the borders with Scotland. There's also a connection in this church with Charles Kingsley, who wrote the children's book The Waterbabies. So one of the first things you notice as you come into the church is a funeral hearse here. But on the wall behind the hearse there's another intriguing artefact. So on the wall here we've got this extraordinary document which lists men from the village of Arncliffe and Littondale, which is the valley around here, including the villages of Lytton and Halton Gill. And it lists men who fought at the Battle of Flodden in 1513. And it's an extraordinary document in that you can see quite a few repeat names there. There's a few Knolls, a few Atkinsons, some Tennants here repeated a few times. And you'll see by the side of their names, it records whether they've got a horse, and obviously there's only maybe one lord with a horse for each group there. And it lists as to whether they're carrying a bow or a bill. And it's by the side of this document that we've got a 16th century bill with the hook and the spike at the top. So the men listed here are just ordinary men who had to go off and fight for their feudal lord. And in Arncliffe and in the surrounding valley here, the family in charge were the Archers family, and they themselves were underneath the Percy family, who owned all of Littondale here and Wharfdale. So the Battle of Flodden was fought up in the borders in Northumberland, in the borderlands with Scotland, with the English army fighting a Scottish army led by King James IV of Scotland, while Henry VIII was off fighting in France. King James IV of Scotland led an army of between 30 and 40,000 men, while the English comprised about 25,000. It was Thomas Howard, the Earl of Surrey, who actually led the English army, and he mustered men from the northern marches, so Northumberland, Yorkshire, Westmoreland, Cumberland, all this northern area. Fought on the 9th of September 1513, the fact that bows and bills are mentioned here is really significant because they played a key part in defeating the Scots with their long pikes, their spears meant to repel cavalry. Cannons were ineffective because of the hilly terrain. So first off, it was the archers who fired volleys of arrows into the Scots. Famously, Lord Scrope of Wensleydale and Castle Botham, the next valley over, commanded the Wensleydale archers, immortalised in a famous border ballad. So it ended up with the Scots marching down with their pikes from their position on Branxton Hill down into the valley, but they soon became bogged down in the marshy terrain at the bottom of the valley, with rain having fallen overnight. So that's when the English billhooks could really exploit them. They're shorter, they could get in between the pikes. With these hooks, you could grab your opponents, you could find gaps in the armour with those spikes at the end, you could club them over the top with the sort of axe point there. They're a really versatile weapon. You could even parry with the short handle, block blows, and they just basically opened up the Scots like a Swiss Army knife with these things. And the Scottish army were decimated. It was a massive defeat, and King James IV of Scotland was actually killed at the battle. In all, it's estimated that 1,500 English were killed and 5,000 wounded, compared to between 5,000 and 14,000 Scottish killed. So it's round the corner of the tower here that Seigfried and Tristan run, entering from that direction. And you can see the River Skirfair runs right past the church. And it's the river, the bridge next to it, and the church here, which inspired Charles Kingsley, while he was here on holiday, to write The Waterbabies, who famously also wrote Westward Ho, but in The Waterbabies it tells the story of a young chimney sweep called Tom who falls off the bridge into the river here and transforms into a water baby. It goes on to a series of adventures, meeting other water babies and creatures that live in the river and the sea. It's kind of a moralistic fable with lots of Christian themes, and he grows into a better person. But there's a passage in here where Charles Kingsley describes, to some extent, the valley, the village and the church here. As soon as Tom saw it, he determined to go, for that was the place for him. A deep, deep, green and rocky valley, very narrow and filled with wood. And through the wood, hundreds of feet below him, he could see a clear stream. Oh, but if he could but just get down to that stream. Then, by that stream, he saw the roof of a little cottage, and a little garden set out in squares and beds. However, down he went, like a brave little man as he was, for he was very footsore, tired, and hungry, and thirsty. While the church bells rang so loud, he began to think maybe they were inside his own head, and the river chimed and tinkled far below. And this was the song that it sang. Clear and cool, by laughing shallow and dreaming pool. Cool and clear, by shining single and foaming weir. Under the crag where the ouzel sings, and the ivied wall where the church bell rings. Undefiled, for the undefiled. Play by me, bathing me, mother and child. So there you go, that is St Oswald's Church here in Arncliffe. Really fascinating history inside the church, and if you'd like to help support them in their work, I'll see if I can find a link for donations and leave it down below. But in terms of All Creatures Great and Small, obviously the wedding ceremony continued, and the interior of the church for the wedding was actually filmed at another church further down the valley, and I'll be going there next, St Michael and All Angels in Hubberholm. So, if you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like, subscribe to the channel, keep watching, and until next time, keep church searching.